think Gypsy and Ken just subtly told us that they're broken up and they're not together, because when they were referencing parenting their child, they kept calling it co-parenting. And when two people in a relationship that have a kid, it's not co-parenting, it's simply parenting. And I think there's a pretty decent chance the reason why they're no longer together is Gypsy finally did get her paternity test, and Ryan may be the father, so Ken sees no reason to keep the charade going other than to get a paycheck by being on the show. Close sources and family friends are saying that Ken and Gypsy have been in couples counseling together and that he's very mean to Gypsy, which I'm not really sure why you're in couples counseling if you started talking in February and started dating in April. Y'all have only been in a relationship for 6 months, so these red flags are blood red. Also, it has been proven that Gypsy has been consistently reaching out to Ryan and trying to get back in his good graces and his good side. Is it possibly because he is the father of her child, and as soon as Ken breaks up with her, she's gonna run back to Ryan, or is it for another reason?
Have you ever noticed that sometimes what's on the surface doesn't tell the whole story? That's exactly what's happening with Gypsy Rose Blanchard and her recent public outings with Ken. On the outside, they look like any other couple, but when you take a closer look, things aren't adding up. Today we are peeling back the layers of their interactions, the public's shifting perception, and the symbolism that surrounds Gypsy's every move. Let's dive into the details and uncover what's really going on behind the scenes. Let's start by analyzing the video footage of Gypsy Rose Blanchard and Ken Urker at Universal Studios. On the surface, it might seem like a normal outing, a couple enjoying a day out. But if you look closely, something is undeniably off. Their interactions lack the warmth and affection you would expect from a couple anticipating for the arrival of their child. Ken's body language speaks volumes. He often avoids eye contact. His gaze shifts away, and there is a palpable distance between them as they walk. It's as though he is physically present but emotionally disconnected.
Hang in there.
I thought you said a squirrel.
No, it's Sephora.
This behavior isn't just a one-off occurrence. Consider their trip to San Francisco, specifically when they visited the Golden Gate Bridge. The tension between them was apparent, an awkward formality in their poses, the lack of shared laughter, and a visible effort to maintain distance.
Okay, you know what they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Now, I told you guys yesterday that Gypsy has been reaching out to Ryan, allegedly, telling Ryan that Ken is treating her like SHIT, and she feels like she made a mistake being with Ken, and she's sorry for what she did to Ryan. Now, I want you to look closely at this picture. Ken's body language is, he's giving her the type of hold that you'd give a buddy in a picture. Look at the way his shoulders are up, his stance. This is not a affectionate picture. There's very much distance between their body. And that's how all their pictures look. I think anyone that has really watched Gypsy Rose and Ken, you know that Ken is not into her. And honestly, I don't think he's really into women, period. And we already have been down that road and we know why. This is the way you'd hold your little brother in a picture, or your dad, or maybe a friend, not a lover that's pregnant with your child, allegedly. Which, again, I just truly believe that this is Ryan's child, which is why she's reaching back out to him towards the end of the pregnancy, or the middle, or whatever she said, because you know that she don't be telling the truth.
This stiff dynamic was even more pronounced at the airport, where Ken's frustrations seemed to bubble to the surface. His gestures, from brief, almost dismissive nods to subtle eye rolls, hinted at irritation beyond mere travel fatigue. It projected an image that was hard to dismiss, disinterest mingled with strained patience. These recurring moments have not gone unnoticed by the public. Many have started to question whether their relationship is genuine or just a performance for appearance. The signs are consistent across different settings, from casual outings to more public events, painting a picture that raises eyebrows. Is Ken genuinely committed, or is he playing a part for reasons only known to him? His apparent detachment could be sending a message that this relationship lacks the deep emotional connection Gypsy might want the world to believe. This pattern of non-affectionate behavior isn't new. It's shown up time and time again, each instance with its own nuances, but echoing the same overreaching theme. A relationship that feels more staged than sincere, and that's the crux of it. Is this just a facade to fit into a narrative Gypsy has created? Or is there more beneath the surface, something we haven't fully understood yet? The public's growing skepticism only deepens as these moments continue to play out in plain sight, leaving room for more questions than answers. Moving on to how the public interacts with them, or rather, how they don't. For someone who boasts millions of followers online and claims to be an influential figure, Gypsy Rose Blanchard isn't exactly drawing crowds in real life. At Universal Studios, amidst the sea of tourists and fans eager to sport a familiar face, she walked unnoticed. Not a single person approached her or Ken, and the indifference was almost palpable. This moment is significant because it contradicts the image she projects online, that of an influencer with a massive following and wide recognition. This isn't an isolated incident. Time and time again, whether it's at the airport, a public event, or casual outings, Gypsy Rose and Ken Urker have moved through spaces with minimal, if any, acknowledgement from passerbys. These encounters serve as a stark reality check, contrasting sharply with the carefully curated persona Gypsy has cultivated on social media. It raises an essential question: is the perceived fame and influence just an illusion? When the real-world response doesn't align with the digital one, the authenticity of her reach and impact comes into question. Analyzing further, it becomes evident that the public's disinterest signals more than just fleeting attention spans.
But the signs have always been there. We can already guess that Ken probably treats her poorly because Ken looks visibly miserable in every live that they do. In recent interviews with TMZ, he always seems annoyed when he's around Gypsy, right?
Now stands under a more scrutinizing lens. The public's indifference hints at growing skepticism. Perhaps people are starting to see through the veneer of her influence status, realizing that it doesn't hold up without the spectacle or drama that once surrounded her. This shift isn't just about Gypsy not being approached. It's about what the silence implies. It challenges the very foundation of her public persona and questions every narrative she's been weaving. How much of her influence is real, and how much is constructed for online engagement? As these moments of disconnection continue, they chip away at the credibility she projects. Ken's presence alongside her also adds to the complexity. While he stands by her side, his own body language and apparent reluctance to engage with the public create another layer of detachment. This contributes to the overall impression that their partnership may be more calculated than candid. The indifference they face isn't just a commentary on Gypsy Rose's fading fame. It's a reflection of how the public may be growing weary of curated narratives that don't hold up under real-world scrutiny. So what does this mean for Gypsy Rose Blanchard? It suggests that the story she's telling online might be losing its rawness. So what does this mean for Gypsy Rose Blanchard? It suggests that the story she's telling online might be losing its resonance. And the more moments like this occur, the clearer it becomes the reality doesn't match the digital display. The illusion of influence can only stretch so far before it breaks, leaving behind a more sobering truth. Notoriety isn't the same as enduring public interest, and Gypsy's reach may not be as wide as it once seemed. Now, let's delve into the topic of her tattoos, which have sparked more than a few conversations. Gypsy Rose has several tattoos, but some stand out of their unsettling symbolism. One of most talked about designs is the one that resembles a series of lowercase e characters with a capital D at the top. This could be interpreted as spelling out her mother's name, Didi, in a cryptic way. But it doesn't stop there. The design itself has an eerie quality, almost like a heart rate monitor that flatlines, complete with dots that resemble drips of blood. The implications of this tattoo are chilling, and it's not just a piece of art, it's a daily reminder of her mother's death, something she chose to etch into her skin permanently. This brings up the question, why would someone commemorate such a traumatic event in this way? Is it a tribute, a confession, or something else entirely? And then there is a tattoo on her back, which has been interpreted as a phoenix rising, a symbol of rebirth from the ashes. Given the context, it's hard not to link this to her mother's death and the life Gypsy Rose has built in its aftermath. These tattoos aren't just decorative, they are loaded with meaning. Whether intentional or subconscious, they add another layer to the public's understanding of who she is and what her motives might be. Is she trying to keep the narrative of her past alive as a way to control it? Or is this a deeper, more psychological expression of guilt and identity? The public has their theories, and none of them paint a simple picture. Now, let's shift to what's happening right now. The paternity test. This has been a point of significant public interest, and for good reason. Initially, it was believed that the test would be conducted after the baby was born, but recent reports indicate that it may have been done earlier.
Gypsy Rose Blanchard had her paternity test done yesterday, and her ex, Ryan, has now come out and shared his thoughts on the situation, and he did not hold back. Gypsy had a non-invasive paternity test done yesterday where they take a blood sample from her and a cheek swab from Ken.
The fact that this process is unfolding publicly adds more tension to an already convoluted story. What's noteworthy is how Gypsy Rose has handled this phase. She had paused her content creation on YouTube, only to return with posts that seem carefully timed. This raises questions about her motives. Is she trying to prepare her audience for more potential relations? Is this a way to divert attention or control the narrative before it takes on a life of its own? The anticipation is palpable, and people are waiting to see how this will play out. Interestingly, there are talks of a second DNA test. Legal teams and media sources have hinted at this, which adds another layer of intrigue. If the first test was inconclusive or raised further questions, a second could either confirm suspicions or create an even more chaos. And while all this unfolds, Gypsy Rose continues to project an image of carefree enjoyment, posting videos, going on outings with Ken, and engaging with her dwindling follower base. It's almost as if she's trying to convince herself and everyone watching that everything is fine, even when the cracks are becoming more evident. These recent developments aren't just isolated events. They are part of a larger pattern. Gypsy Rose's actions, from her tattoos to her public appearances, and the way she navigates media attention, all point to someone who is trying to maintain control over her story. But the more she tries, the more people start to question the authenticity behind it all. The relationship with Ken, the tattoos, the paternity test, they're all pieces of a puzzle that, when put together, reveal a complex portrait of a person who is constantly shifting between being a figure of sympathy and one of skepticism. The public's perception is changing, and the questions keep piling up. Is this a genuine attempt at moving forward, or is it all just another chapter in a long history of carefully crafted narratives? As we step back and look at a broader picture, one thing becomes clear. Gypsy Rose Blanchard's story is far from straightforward. From the non-affectionate behavior with Ken to the symbolic tattoos and the ongoing paternity drama, every piece adds to a narrative that's both compelling and deeply unsettling. The public is no longer just watching passively. They are analyzing, questioning, and piecing together the inconsistencies. So where does this leave us? It leaves us waiting, watching, and wondering what the next chapter will bring. Will Gypsy Rose finally address the doubts? Or will the carefully constructed image continue to unravel? Only time will tell. But one thing is for sure, this facade is sleeping, and the world is paying attention. Thank you for sticking with me through this deep dive. If you have thoughts, questions, or theories of your own, share them in the comments. Let's keep conversation going.